Hi, I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans, America's largest mortgage lender. Let's talk credit card debt for a minute. If you feel you're carrying too much of it, you're not alone. The average household in the U.S. carries over $8,000 in credit card debt. Ready for some good news? With a cash-out refinance from Quicken Loans, you can quickly and easily put some of the equity in your home to good use by paying off a lot of that high-interest credit card debt. A great way to take cash out is with our 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. The rate today on our 30-year fixed-rate mortgage is 4.125%. APR 4.22%. Call us today at 800-QUICKEN to learn how taking cash out with a 30-year fixed mortgage might be the right solution for you. And for a record 9 years in a row, J.D. Power has ranked Quicken Loans highest in the nation in customer satisfaction for primary mortgage origination. Call us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com.
For J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com. Rates subject to change. Pay 0.88% fee to receive this discounted rate. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. License in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
Prepare for glory!
I want to know if you got your popcorn ready. Do you got your popcorn ready?
I came out the womb, I was ready.
And he's hit the end zone for an unbelievable touchdown.
I would be honored if you played football for this team.
Throw it up above his head. They can't jump with me. Golly. Oh, they tackle him at the 40-yard line. Who can make a play? I can. Who can make a play? I can.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast, brought to you guys by the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast Network. You can, of course, always find them at FTFPodNet on Twitter. You can find me at SportsFanaticMB on Twitter, and you can find Dennis at Culture_Coach. We are, again, part of the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast Network, who has a ton of great other podcasts, including Jim Day of FF Champs, Adam Ronis and Dr. Roto of SiriusXM Radio, Bob Lung of the award-winning Fantasy Football Consistency Guide, Anthony Servino of FF Faceoff, and many others. And you can find all those great podcasts on fulltimefantasy.com. Today's episode, we've got an interesting one for you. So we'll obviously go over any of the breaking news that's happened over the weekend since we last recorded. Me and Dennis will then give you a couple of guys that we thought stood out in preseason week one. Again, we saw a lot of rookies playing, not necessarily a lot of vets, though some did and some were very surprising. So we'll touch on those for a little bit. And then we are going to get in our top offensive trios in the NFL. That is right, we ranked the quarterback, running back, and wide receiver for each team, and then we rank them 1 through 32. Today, we will be giving you guys 32 through 16, and then on the next episode, we will give you guys 15 through 1. So without further ado, let's get Dennis on here so we can talk about some of the news and preseason games.
Hello!
What's going on, Dennis? How was your weekend?
Man, my weekend was fantastic. I took an extra day on Friday, spent it out on the lake with the family. The boat ran fantastic. Shoot, I've been so busy this summer. It was the first time we got the boat out.
That is awesome. I wish I had a boat or really lived anywhere near some kind of lake that I could take a boat out on, but that does sound like a lot of fun.
Sunburn and all.
Yeah, that's the worst part about it right there is getting the sunburn, right? I'm very pale for people who have seen me in person or seen pictures of me. I'm one of those people that I do not really tan. If I'm out in the sun too long, I just burn.
I'm pale, not because I don't tan, but because I don't go in the sun.
Well, I unfortunately am out in the sun with my job a lot, so it's very funny actually seeing how much I burn compared to being tan. But as I talked about in the intro there, we are going to do a little bit of everything here today. So not a lot to recap game-wise from the preseason. We saw a couple players not necessarily break out, but have good games, so we'll touch on those guys. We will then touch on any, not really injuries, but some breaking news stuff, and then we are going to do a little bit of our offensive trios. We went through and ranked the top 32 teams. Well, there is only 32 teams, so I don't know why I said the top 32 teams. 32 teams based on their offensive trios: quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. The best of the bunch. Dennis has his ranked, I ranked mine, and then we're going to compare them with what Dynasty Nerds, the site that both of us write for, Dennis is the editor for, we will compare our rankings to what Dynasty Nerds says are going to be the best trios this year. I am really looking forward to it and excited to do this little exercise and see how it all turns out. Dennis has not seen the Dynasty Nerds rankings and how they did. I have not seen Dennis's rankings either, so I'm really interested to see how this all plays out between the three of us. But before we get to that, let's talk about some of the breaking news over the past weekend.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
So the major news with, and it really was all about Antonio Brown this weekend. We heard all about his frostbite feet last week. Me and Dennis talked about it on both podcasts. Yeah. We also had the helmet issue that popped up late over the weekend. He filed a grievance. The helmet that he has been wearing, I would assume pretty much his entire career, has not necessarily been outlawed by the NFL, but is no longer approved, and they cannot wear it. He filed a grievance saying that he wanted to wear that helmet. That grievance did not go through. We found that out earlier today. However, Antonio Brown did come out and say that he will play, something that Dennis said while we were pre-recording, that $30 million will make that happen for you, and he is exactly right on that. He would have lost out on $30 million had he stepped away from the game. I don't think any of this really affects him. I'm more worried about the frostbite on his feet and when he'll actually be able to come back and play. Do you have any thoughts on this at all with everything going on with AB and the Rangers, Dennis?
Yeah, the helmet thing was really, I think it was a non-issue. Maybe that was some producer on Hard Knocks saying, "Hey, let's make a little noise with this." But so that, in my opinion, was really nothing. You know, I get it. You get comfortable with something, but rules change and equipment improves. And when it comes to the safety of the players in a violent sport, whenever you can make improvements in the equipment, you have to go along with it, regardless of how comfortable you've been with something in the past. And, you know, I know AB has made a nice little pocket full of money in the NFL so far, but I can't imagine walking away and leaving $30 million on the table over having to change your helmet.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm petty, but come on.
Well, I'm right there with you. So I had a couple people reach out to me this weekend about AB and his whole helmet situation. A lot of people I saw kind of commenting on his mental health and all that. I don't want to say it was a stunt for Hard Knocks, but I don't think it was anything serious going on whatsoever with any of that. I think it was all just noise, if that makes sense. I told people not to trade him. I know a couple people ended up giving him up for selling him for almost 10 cents on the dollar, and I feel like they're going to end up regretting that now, especially with him coming out and saying that he was going to play. Now, all kind of overblown nonsense, in my opinion. The only other real news that has come out has been Dak Prescott asking for $40 million a year. That's about $8 million more than me and Dennis thought that he would get. We both have talked many times on this podcast. We thought he'd get right around $30 million a year. Thought that was a fair price for him and a good price for the Cowboys as well, allowing them to kind of build around him and have a little bit of cap room left over. I personally don't think Dak is worth $40 million. Again, I am a very a noted Cowboys hater. Your opinions on Dak and his request for $40 million a year?
Well, man, they don't give it to you if you don't ask.
I guess that's true.
So, you know, I think if I'm Dak and I'm sitting around or let's say not Dak, if I'm Dak's agent and I'm sitting around and I'm hearing a lot of people talking, Dak is, $30 million's too much. Well, they'll probably, Jerry will pay it though. So $30 million. Well, the last thing I want to do if I'm Dak's agent is start the negotiations at $30 million. So you shoot for the moon. Even if they let Dak walk, he's for fantasy purposes, he's been a QB1, but for real life purposes, kind of middle of the road. So I see where both sides are coming from. Dak's asking for 40. They've offered him 30. Probably, I don't think they'll break a record. I think they still settle in the, 32, 33 million, and move forward. That's a bunch of money. And Dak's got to wonder if he goes out on the open market, is somebody really going to pay that?
I mean, I don't think somebody will, but yeah, I agree with you. They've got to. I would hope that they're able to settle somewhere between 30 and 40 million. Again, I personally don't think he's worth 40 million. I mean, the one thing I can give him is for the most part, he is a proven winner. Ever since he's come into the league, he has won games with the Cowboys, and he's won a playoff game. He's looked really good at times, but he's also looked extremely average and bad at times as well. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting year to see what happens with those three. I know they've already kind of come out and said that they're willing to let all three, him, Cooper, and Zeke, play out their deals this year and then possibly try and work something out in the offseason. I don't think that's going to be good for Dak. Maybe it'll be good for Cooper, but I imagine eventually the Cowboys will find a way to get all these guys paid. A lot of people talking about Jerry Jones will panic, especially if the Cowboys start losing games. If that happens, I imagine all three will get paid. Just really quick before we move on to some of the preseason stuff, do you think all three, one of the three, two of the three, or none of the three will be paid before the season starts?
I definitely think the over-under, I think, is at 2.5. So I think it comes with me basically saying, you know what? I'm okay to wait and let these other people set the market. I've got time. I could certainly see Dak getting paid and then them saying, you know what? Zeke is stubborn enough to actually hold out.
Yeah.
And maybe we win without him, maybe we don't, but we're certainly a better team with him. So maybe they come to an agreement with him and move Amari to after this season. I get the not wanting to break precedent and negotiate with somebody after their third year. You know, I'm going to keep holding tight to my philosophy that if you're a running back and you want to reset the market, you got to do it on your rookie contract by not taking 5 years.
Yeah.
You got to take a shorter contract.
Well, are they allowed to? I mean, most I don't know how that works.
The collective bargaining agreements coming up. So
gotcha. Yeah, that will be definitely interesting. See, especially with something like that, because I hate to say it this way, but it just doesn't affect that majority of the players, how much they'd be willing to give or change to get that rule changed. Or if they do it for all rookies, not just running backs, but all rookies, allow them to take a shorter deal, especially if they're a first-round pick.
I guess we should look into that at some point.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. We've got a little bit of time before the season starts.
We'll get the research team on it.
Exactly. It sounds like a plan.
First and 10 at the Lions 29, and Prescott goes screen right. Elliott down the right side to the 25, to the 20, to the 10. Elliott to the pylon. Zeke Elliott, touchdown. 38 on the screen.
Second down at 10, takes the snap, gives it. Chubb runs, he's in the 15, he's in the 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. There goes Chubb, he's in the 30, 20, 10, 5, touchdown, Chubba Lubba Hub. 92 yards.
Left. Marshawn Lattimore, 12 yards from Adam. Case on a deep drop, steps up in the pocket. He'll fire to the right side. Caught by Diggs. Stay up. Oh my God! Oh my God! 30, no 10, touchdown! Are you kidding me? It's a Minneapolis miracle! Stephon Diggs and the Minnesota Vikings have walked up on the New Orleans Saints. It's a 61-yard Minneapolis miracle.
All right, so now time to talk about some of the preseason football For me, I'm just going to go quick on a couple of the guys I thought stood out a little bit. Obviously, I'm being a huge Browns fan, and luckily the Giants and Jets game went into a lightning delay, so I was actually able to watch some of the Browns-Redskins game before that came back. I thought Baker on his first drive just looked outstanding. I love that they came out there and did kind of a 2-minute offense thing against the Washington Redskins defense. Washington was not able to stop them. I'm hoping that is exactly like what this team is going to look like in the year. Great game from them. I loved seeing a little bit out of Dontrell Hilliard. We had both talked about him a little bit before that game, on that podcast that night before the game started. We said that was a guy to look out for, and I thought he looked good in that game as well. Looking forward to seeing what else he can do this preseason. I thought Dwayne Haskins looked like a rookie in that game. I liked his comments afterwards, even though those are kind of the cookie-cutter answers you give and that you learn more from an interception than you do a touchdown. He did throw 2 interceptions. We'll see what happens. I'm not reading too much into that, though. Jay Gruden did come out and say that Colt McCoy and Case Keenum are the leaders right now on the depth chart. And lastly, I did want to touch on Kyler Murray. Although I do think that the offensive game plan was kind of built for him to get the ball out quickly, so it kind of limited him looking bad. I thought that he looked fairly decent. I did like there was a couple plays where he ran around when he got out of the pocket but didn't run. He kept his eyes downfield, threw the balls. There was one to the right sideline that was just ridiculously nice. I really liked what I saw out of Murray. Hopefully that's a picture of good things to come. There was a wide receiver I really liked, but since that's your guy, I will let you break him down. But out of those guys, that was really it that all stood out for me this week. What about you, Dennis? Did anybody stand out for you in week 1 of the preseason?
Well, as a Quadrialison truther, it was nice to see him improve from the Hall of Fame game.
Yeah.
He did look a little better, looked like he was moving better. I mean, in the Hall of Fame game, he just looked kind of stiff. So with him putting up a little better showing, I think he's obviously still has a depth chart to climb. He's got Ito and Brian Hill in front of him for the backup to Devontae Freeman. But, there's plenty of time, and I think, I didn't draft Quadrialison with the expectation he'd be in a timeshare going into week 1. So I did like that he improved. The biggest one, man, was Preston Williams.
Yeah.
So he looked like a boss out there. Him and Josh Rosen. I've got Rosen on a team I'm rebuilding, and I was excited last year in the first year of the rebuild because I had Rosen and Christian Kirk on my taxi squad, and I'm like, man, this is great. I've got a nice quarterback, wide receiver, young. They came in together, and then the Cardinals blew the hell out of that with their awful offense and changing coaches, and so now I didn't have that nice little stack there. But I also on that team I did draft Preston Williams. Now I got Christian Kirk, Josh Rosen, and Preston Williams. So nice. Rosen didn't look half bad. I think that Fitzgerald is the comfortable choice in Miami. Mm-hmm. Rosen is going to have to outplay him. If it's even, I think they're going to defer to the veteran.
You mean Fitzpatrick?
Yeah. So, and that may be okay. I think even if Fitzpatrick starts the season, I think Rosen sees time, and they could even end up splitting games because, Fitzpatrick is as likely to throw 5 interceptions as he is 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I'll say about Rosen, I actually kind of felt bad for him. The dude was running for his life all last year in Arizona and then was doing pretty much the same thing in that preseason game with Miami. Like, the dude cannot catch a break. I know neither one of us were or at least I was, and I can't remember if you weren't. I was not big on Josh Rosen. I actually had him ranked 4th or tied technically with Josh Allen with the QBs coming out last year, and he has not necessarily shown me anything to prove me wrong, although I will admit he did look he looked good in that Miami game when he wasn't running for his life, and the connection he was sure making there with Preston Williams was definitely impressive. For me, Preston Williams, again, a guy that you talked about a lot. I think it was Jared Wackerly when we had him on for the Combine stuff, was also hyping up.
Jimbo.
Yeah, you guys were hyping him up a lot before anybody really talked about him. And he definitely impressed this past weekend.
Well, the one last guy that I'd like to bring up, it could end up being, a third-round rookie steal, fourth-round rookie steal, Jalen Hurd.
Yes.
So with Trent Taylor going down, Hurd looks like he might be the real deal in the slot. What's he, 6'3", 240 or something like that? And he looked fast playing against the Raiders. So he showed, he's got the ability to run the ball, the ability to catch the ball. He gets open quick, and with that big frame, he doesn't need to get maybe quite the separation on the safety that a lot of other players do to be able to bring the pass in. So he could end up really being a nice safety blanket for Jimmy Garoppolo. He looked real good.
Yeah, and he is 6'5", 226, so he is a big, fast weapon, and those guys, too, tend to thrive in Kyle Shanahan's offense, and I agree with you. He was another one that was standout that I kind of forgot about, so he had a really good weekend as well. I'm interested to see where it goes forward for him. Obviously, Preston Williams. So what they got? Kenny Stills, Albert Wilson. Where do you think Preston Williams falls on that depth chart when it comes down to the season opening up?
I think when the season opens up, he'll be probably their wide receiver 3. So I think there'll be Stills on the outside, Wilson will be the slot guy, and then when they go 3 wide, Williams will come in and be the other outside guy. I think by week 6, it's going to be Preston Williams and all you others, or as Kirk Herbstreit used to say, AYO.
All right, well, I like it. So that's really going to do it for our preseason stuff. There's not much to dive into with that week 1 preseason games. We did see a lot of the rookies playing and everything, although week 2 and week 3 we'll obviously see it ramped up a little bit more, and we will definitely dive in deeper into previewing and recapping those as they come along.
Well, and if you are looking for a little deeper overview, you can head over to Dynasty Nerds and check out Kyle Matthew dropped a nice little article covering he phrased it as a add and stash, add and sell, and keep them on the waiver wire, and went over just about every game, touched on players that he thought were pretty relevant fantasy-wise, and then at Dynasty Tools also released 4 quarters and touched on 4 young players that look good this weekend. So head on over to Dynasty Nerds and check those guys out.
Absolutely. And speaking of Kyle Matthew, we'll talk about his boy really quick before we move on to the offensive trios. N'Keal Harry had a nice catch in the game for the Patriots, but did leave a little banged up. There was a report that came across just a little bit before me and Dennis started recording, saying that he is dealing with a variety of injuries, but I believe it is being reported that he will be fine, especially for the start of the season. But that's something to watch. Until we hear more about it, nothing to panic about if you're an N'Keal Harry owner, especially in a dynasty league. Many believe he is a stud in the making. All right, so now me and Dennis are going to talk about our offensive trios for the 2019 season. So we are focusing based solely on 2019. This is not something that for you dynasty owners, there's probably going to be some teams that are ranked lower that would surprise you, and that's probably due to, at least for me, players I think are going to regress a little bit. Some players I think are going to have great years. Again, dynasty would probably change this up a little bit, but for me, I went solely based on what I think these teams are going to do in 2019. So how I did it for the Dynasty Nerd sides, we took the top-ranked quarterback, running back, and wide receiver for all 32 teams. They went into a pot. We took their ranking number based, again, on the consensus of the multiple great rankers we have over at Dynasty Nerd and Dynasty Nerds, and that it was added all up. The lowest score won. So that is how Dynasty Nerds rankings were put out. Dennis and myself ranked them differently. I ranked mine based on how I thought they would do this year. Dennis, how did you rank your 32 teams?
So, yeah, I ranked them as for how I thought they would do in 2019 as well. Okay. We're mostly dynasty. We're heading into redraft season. We do dynasty, but we care about what's going to happen this season, and so that's kind of how I spread this out here.
All right. So since we're all on the same page here, let's kick it off. We'll do it. You keep giving us your 32nd ranked team. I will give mine, and then we will see what the Dynasty Nerds consensus team said will be the 32nd ranked trio. Go ahead and give us your number 32.
Well, they just moved to the number 32 spot. As I sit here and I keep looking and I'm going, well, wait a minute. Does this one player have enough heft to lift this trio above this other trio? And so I've kind of been it's been that going on right now. That being said, my number 32 is the trio of Haskins, Geis, and McLaurin.
Wow. Okay. All right. Is that just because of Haskins or Haskins and McLaurin?
You know, it's two rookies. I think Haskins is going to be a really good quarterback in the NFL. I think McLaurin is showing he's got all the tools to be, a top 24 wide receiver. Geis is coming off the injury. I think he's going to end up splitting time a little more early in the season than I think he will later as he sort of works that knee back into shape, gets it comfortable with taking hits, things like that. I feel like Haskins, as good as I think his potential is, we've seen that he's still got a lot to learn. Mm-hmm. He's going to make some mistakes. We've seen a lot of really good quarterbacks spend their rookie season, with 15 touchdowns and 20 interceptions. And the Redskins, honestly, are a pretty mediocre team. So he could be in for it's like his, what would we call it? He's in graduate school, basically, in football. He's going to have another year of learning. He's going to be learning on the field. He's got some good young parts. Geis, McLaurin, Jordan Reed's a solid veteran at tight end who I think is really going to be, I feel like he's due for a healthy season. Will Josh Dotson take another step? There's a few opportunities for people to step up, but I think all in all, when I look at the 32 teams and the 32 trios we have here, I'm going to put them at my 32.
All right, well, that's interesting. I have them obviously much higher than that. So for me, the Dolphins were 32. I just don't, as I stated earlier when we were talking about Fitzpatrick and Rosen, I'm just not necessarily a believer in Rosen. The only guy out of this trio I even like is Kenyan Drake, and I'm worried about the production he may have just based on how bad this offense is going to be. Albert Wilson was the highest ranked wide receiver, so that's who we went with. I wouldn't be surprised if Albert Wilson has a decent year, low-tier wide receiver 2, high upside wide receiver 3 for fantasy, but I just don't expect these guys to put up as many points as anybody else, so that's why they fell to 32 for me, and that was actually the 32nd team for the Dynasty Nerds as well. They finished with 135 points, with Rosen ranked at 31, Drake at 26, and Albert Wilson, the highest ranked wide receiver, finished as ranking 78. So who did you have at 29?
31, you mean?
Yeah, 31. I don't know why I skipped 30 and 29 as well, or 30 and 31, but yeah, go ahead. Give us 31 instead.
I have Rosen, Drake, and Wilson.
Okay, all right.
So, I feel like Drake and Geis are a wash. They're pretty even. Haskins and Rosen, I'm going to give the edge to Rosen based on the 1 year of experience he has. And right now, I think Wilson, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if McLaurin outscores Wilson. I think that the veteran status of Rosen and Wilson give me just a little more comfort than the rookie status of Haskins and McLaurin.
All right, so apparently I have tied with the Dynasty Nerd rankings here, these first three, and then everything else is all kind of messed up. But so for me, at 29, I have the Buffalo Bills. I like Josh Allen a lot. And this is probably why I have them ranked a lot lower. This was something that we talked about when we were deciding these rankings, was I am not big on Zay Jones. I actually had John Brown on there as the third player in this trio, but you said to go Zay Jones, and Zay Jones was actually the highest ranked wide receiver for the Dynasty Nerds as well. And then we have Devin Singletary on there because we both believe LaShawn McCoy is going to get cut. Now, Singletary did look good in his limited work there in the preseason game, but I'm just not sold on Allen's arm being able to produce as much as his legs, and while his legs are probably going to get you a fair amount of fantasy points this year, we're going to need more out of Zay Jones and Devin Singletary, and as I said, I'm just not that big of a believer in Jones, which is why they dropped to 31 for me. For Dynasty Nerds, again, they did finish 31 with 117 points. Josh Allen with 19, Devin Singletary with the 44, and Zay Jones ranked all the way down at 54. So now, who did you rank at 30?
I ranked the Giants, Manning,
Wow, okay.
Barkley, and Shepard. This was one of those where I had to look at it and say, how far can Saquon Barkley lift the albatross that is Eli Manning? And honestly, when I look at the teams that I have above them, now that I look at, I'm going to change my ranking, and I'm going to move San Francisco to 30.
All right.
I think that as I actually initially had them 2 spots ahead of them, and I'm going to call an audible.
It's fair enough. That's why it hasn't been printed yet, so you're still good to make that call.
So, yeah, so at number 30, I've got the San Francisco 49ers. Garoppolo's shown some flashes. Coleman hasn't shown that he can carry the load, and Pettis needs to get consistent. Pettis has flashed. Could they potentially finish higher? All 3 of them could potentially finish higher. But I think in this season, there's this is good. If this is your top 3, this is going to be a real test of Kyle Shanahan's offense.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, and as I know you can see in my ranks, I don't have them far off from right here either. For me, the only reason I have the Ravens ranked lower than them is I just don't believe in their quarterback and wide receiver. I like their running back, but I'm also a little bit worried about him. So obviously, the trio we had here for the Ravens was Lamar Jackson, Mark Ingram, and then Marquise Hollywood Brown was the highest ranked wide receiver. So they finished with 105 points. Lamar Jackson was ranked at 23, Ingram at 30, Brown at 52. I know a lot of people are high on Brown based on his speed, and while I do think Lamar Jackson is going to be better this year throwing the ball, I just don't think he's going to be much better. I know that John Harbaugh has come out and said that he is going to, break Cam Newton's rushing record or rushing attempts by quarterback. I hope not. I really hope that they don't do that to Lamar Jackson. But if they do, he's going to put up a lot of fantasy points. I'll give him that. But I don't think he's going to be able to survive that. I just don't think that this offense is going to be much good or do much of anything. I think they're going to rely heavily on that defense to keep them in games and have a lot of low-scoring games. So that is why I don't think those 3 will score or amount to much of anything. So they are my 30, and they are the Dynasty Nerds 30 as well, and that is where we stop being tied. So I'm happy about that. Who do you have at number 29?
Number 29, I have the Giants.
Okay.
So I feel like Manning, boy, honestly, I'm at that point with Eli Manning. I'd feel so much better about this if Daniel Jones was their quarterback.
Really? Okay.
Because there's nothing to lose putting Jones in. We know what Eli Manning is now. Maybe that offensive line has gotten better, but he's not he has not aged well. He was never a high completion percentage quarterback anyways. He made big plays at big times to win a couple Super Bowls. But he's kind of like Joe Namath. You know, Namath finished his career with a losing record, I think, in a sub 60 completion percentage. And it's just, I think Eli Manning is he's like the boring Joe Namath.
Fair enough. All right, so for me at 29, you already talked about him. The San Francisco 49ers don't have much else to add to what you gave. Again, that they were Jimmy G, Tevin Coleman, and Dante Pettis. I agree with what you said that they could very much outscore this ranking, but for me, I'm not sure that I buy it. I mean, Kyle Shanahan is probably the best reason to buy into that, but I need to see it. Tevin Coleman, you know, while he's had some good run in Atlanta, is often injured. Dante Pettis is already getting talks now that he might not even be a starter after everybody thought he was a breakout in camp. And we really haven't seen it from Jimmy G for a full season. So that's why I had those guys ranked down there. However, the Dynasty Nerds 29 was not the 49ers or the Giants. It was the Jacksonville Jaguars, which was a little surprising to me. However, most of that comes, I think, from from their starting wide receiver, who I know me and Dennis both think is going to have a big year, but not so much in the rankings for the Dynasty Nerds. So, Nick Foles was ranked 34, Leonard Fournette at 17, and then D.D. Westbrook at 53 to get a score of 104. So that is where Dynasty Nerds falls in on the 29 team. Who do you have at 28?
At 28, I have the Broncos.
Okay.
The Denver Broncos, I like Cortland Sutton a lot, but he's got to prove it still. I think Phillip Lindsay is due to split time with Royce Freeman, who's looking much better in his second year. I'll admit, I don't think Royce Freeman is maybe as good as I thought he was, but he's going to be in an offensive system now that's a little more suited to his abilities. So Joe Flacco being a wily veteran, we've seen that as much as they like Drew Lock, it's pretty clear Drew Lock isn't ready, and he's only going to get snaps in absolute emergencies during the regular season. So Flacco should feel fairly confident going into the season. But there's a lot of questions in Denver. They've got a new coach, a new offensive system, and I just wasn't sure. I didn't feel like as good as the metrics are with Sutton and as good a rookie year as Lindsey had, I just didn't feel like they had what it took to be able to lift these guys up.
All right, so for me at 28, I had the Tennessee Titans. So the trio for the Titans was Marcus Mariota, Derrick Henry, and Corey Davis. Actually, ranked fairly well for the Dynasty Nerds, so I was way off on that, which is surprising to me, but I'm just not a believer in any three of those guys. I was actually kind of surprised I ranked them there. I just felt like there's a little bit more questions behind them with the 49ers, Ravens, Bills, and Dolphins, so that's why I ranked them there. But they're actually surprisingly much higher, which was a surprise to me. For the Dynasty Nerds, their 28 was the Washington Redskins, who we have talked about a little bit here with Dennis. I have yet to rank them. They had Haskins ranked at 25, Geis at 21, and McLaurin at 54 for a score of 100. Who do you have at 27?
27, I have the Ravens.
Okay.
So I'm not necessarily sold yet on Jackson taking a huge step in the passing game. I am sold on the fact that Jackson can put up points running, and he's got a great connection with Mark Andrews. Now, that may come at to the detriment of Hollywood Brown, but Jackson's still going to get those points for throwing those touchdowns to Mark Andrews.
Very true.
Hollywood is used to playing with a quarterback that can get outside the pocket and wing the ball downfield. And Jackson does have decent arm strength, even if he's not terribly accurate. So we'll see. And I feel like Ingram is poised to lead probably the most run-heavy team in the league in carries. He's, a sturdy 5'10", 222 pounds. Ingram is a solid guy. Is he going to break outside and take it to the house 79 yards? Probably not. But he'll tear off some 20 and 30-yard runs. He's going to get 5, 6, 7 consistently, and I think he's going to rack up a bunch of touchdowns on the ground. So I like the Ravens, especially from a run standpoint.
For me at 27, I had the New York Football Giants. My only real question here was with Eli Manning. Obviously, we know Saquon Barkley is going to be a stud, and I'm not necessarily a huge believer in Sterling Shepard, but I do think he could have a decent year with Golden Tate kind of being the one there now. With him being gone for 4 games, I do think they're going to try and target Shepard a little bit more. And I don't think the Giants team around him is actually as bad as many think they are. I mean, when Tate comes back, you have those two, Barkley and then Evan Ingram. That's actually not that bad of an offense, so I do think they can produce a little bit better than some people do. I actually don't think, I know you had them ranked lower. The Nerd Herd was actually much higher on them than I even expected. They're higher than both of us. For the Nerd Herd, they had the Broncos coming in at 27, Flacco being ranked 38, Lindsey 22, and Cortland Sutton at 30 for a score of 90. Who do you have at 26?
26, I have the Tennessee Titans. The thing that really holds them down is going to be their quarterback. So Corey Davis is, I feel like he measures in, metric-wise, is an elite talent at wide receiver. He's just had shitty quarterback play for the first 3 or 4 years. And I don't see a lot of improvement on the horizon this season. Derrick Henry, there's talk about them giving him the ball more and more and more like they did at the end of the season last year. So I think Henry, of the 3, Henry is the one that's going to carry these guys. Davis has the potential. If Mariota gets his throwing straightened out and his accuracy improves and he stays healthy, that could bode well for Davis. Having A.J. Brown, the best receiver he's played with in his career, across from him to relieve the pressure could help out. So the potential is there for this team to finish higher, but right now I've got them ranked at 26.
For me at 26, I had the aforementioned Denver Broncos. Not sure what we're going to get from Flacco this year. Obviously, I know they are very high on him. They keep talking him up, but I need to see it to believe it. He wasn't necessarily spectacular in Baltimore last year. I know he was dealing with the back issues. The only person in this group that I trust is the GOAT, Philip Lindsay. I think he is going to be just fine this year. He's going to be amazing. Cortland Sutton, while I think he's a phenomenal talent, is obviously going to have to rely on Flacco getting him the ball to be able to put up any kind of points. The Nerds for the 26th was very interesting to me. I really thought that this group would come in a lot higher than they did. They have the New England Patriots at 26, with Tom Brady ranked at 28, Sony Michel at 15, and Julian Edelman all the way down at 45 to get you a total of 88 points. Who do you have at 25?
25, I have the Buffalo Bills.
So you are much higher on them than me and the Nerds. Tell me why.
Well, I think Josh Allen is, he's got the rushing floor, and he's got the big arms, so there's going to be some big plays. They've got wide receivers that can get down the field. I like Singletary. I think he's set up to have a good season. Potentially the trouble in Buffalo could be their offensive line. They've lost a couple guys, so they do need to shore that up. I like Zay Jones a lot. I like Zay Jones coming out of college, and it seems like he's screwed his head back on straight and is keeping his nose clean and working hard. Jones is a little faster than you might think. I think a lot of times he gets pegged as a possession receiver, but he does have good speed. And I feel like the opportunity is there for this team to put up some good numbers. And, Josh Allen has something that a lot of, I think that what gets lost sometimes with quarterbacks is their ability to get the ball off under pressure. And at 6'5" and 240, you can stand in there. We've seen Ben Roethlisberger do it for years. So Roethlisberger is a nightmare to bring down. And I think Josh Allen, at least while his legs still moving pretty quickly, is going to have an opportunity to get out of the pocket, move around, make some plays, get the ball downfield. So I like them to come in at number 25.
All right, so for me at 25, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This one was interesting for me because for starters, the running back, I do not believe in whatsoever, and it's shown in the rankings as well. The quarterback, however, if Bruce Arians can turn him around like many think he will, then they are definitely going to outscore my ranking of 25, because the only player that was on this list that I believed in was Mike Evans. So the trio for the Buccaneers was Jameis Winston, Peyton Barber, and Mike Evans. As much as it pains me to admit it, Mike Evans is by far a top 12. I might be willing to give you top 10 wide receiver right now in the NFL, and is going to be an absolute stud regardless. But Winston still has to get him the ball and score you fantasy points to be able to outproduce this number, and I'm just not sure that he will with the amount of times that he turns the ball over. That is my biggest fear with him. Again, Bruce Arians could turn that around so that he could very easily just blow this projection out of the water here, but I just don't believe in it. I don't believe in Winston. And then Peyton Barber, I don't even think there's really any point in discussing him.
On the plus side of things, though, if Winston turns the ball over, that defense is going to be so bad that they're going to score and give the ball back to Winston to be able to make a play now, down by another touchdown, and going to have to throw.
Yeah, but see, I think that's also bad news for him, too, because the more times he throws it, the more chances he has to throw interceptions. So I don't necessarily think that's a good thing either. But the Nerd Herd at 25 had the 49ers, so a team that we have already both talked about. Jimmy G coming in ranked 12, Tevin Coleman at 35, and Dante Pettis at 39 for a total of 86 points. Who do you have at 24?
24, I have the Cardinals.
Okay.
Kyler Murray looked pretty good in his one series on Thursday night or Friday night, whatever night it was he played. Yeah, I'm a big fan of DJ, and I think we were talking a little earlier. I love Christian Kirk, too.
Yeah.
But there's still some, I'm not 100% sold on Murray. I don't know what that whole air raid offense, is it really going to work? Is the NFL going to be able to figure it out very quickly? There's a lot of very, very smart defensive coordinators in the NFL. We saw what Belichick did to the Rams, who were supposed to be this juggernaut, and he held them to 3 points in the Super Bowl. So when you get some of those guys out there figuring this stuff out pretty quickly, it might not work as well as a lot of people want to think that air raid will work. That being said, I love Christian Kirk's talent. I love DJ. I think DJ is a great fit for that offense. It's just got to work.
So for me at 24, I had the Washington Redskins. I do think that Haskins is going to be able to turn it around a little bit, but my basis on that was the offensive line staying healthy and being good. Obviously, they still do not have Trent Williams, who is still holding out. Doesn't seem like he's going to come back to Washington at all, which will hurt him a little bit, but I kind of paired in his familiarity and relationship with McLaurin and being able to kind of produce a little bit there. And then I do think Darius Geis is in for a monster season this year. So that is why I had them ranked as high as I did. Both you and the Nerds had them much lower. Let's see here. So at 24, the Nerd Herd had the Tennessee Titans. So again, the triplets of Marcus Mariota, who was ranked 32, Derrick Henry at 25, and Corey Davis at 23 to give you a score of 80. They were actually tied with the team that finished 23. So who do you have at 23?
I have Jacksonville at 23.
Okay, so do I.
Well, how about you go first then? Because I go first a lot since you host and you ask the questions. I'll let you give the analysis.
Really the only thing that worries me about these three is Fournette, and he's the highest ranked out of the three. I need him to stay healthy, and I need him to show that he is the stud we thought he was going to be coming out of LSU. And then the other question, I guess, is really going to kind of fall on Nick Foles, and can he and John DeFilippo kind of reproduce the Philly magic that they had when they made that magic run to the Super Bowl? Because I don't have any questions about Dede Westbrook. I think he has the talent. I think he's going to be the number one there. So if Foles can get him the ball, I think he's going to produce. It's really going to come down for me to Foles and Fournette, mainly Fournette, because I do think Foles, a lot of people want to go back to his time in St. Louis, but I also think you can kind of point to Jeff Fisher. Because I think we all kind of remember what happened to the Rams when Sean McVay took over and turned a team that was, I think, 2-9 or something like that before Jeff Fisher got fired, and turned them into a playoff team, and then the year after a Super Bowl team. Even though they didn't win the Super Bowl, they were still in the Super Bowl. So I would almost blame more of Nick Foles' failures on Jeff Fisher than anybody else in St. Louis. But that's it for me. So what is kind of holding you back for the Jags and ranking them here?
I've got to see Foles do it consistently. He's shown flashes. He did it with Chip Kelly. He did it with Doug Peterson. But he's also been just utterly horrible. And is Doug Marrone and DeFilippo are they going to be Jeff Fisher, or are they going to be Doug Peterson and Chip Kelly when it comes to offensive production? So I just don't know, and we'll have to see. I love Westbrook. We've talked about him plenty. Fournette right now is saying and doing all the right things. I've cleared the negative people out of my life. I'm eating healthier. I'm working out more. He's shown that he can catch the ball in camp, yada, yada, yada. So, it'll be interesting to see. Fournette's also coming towards the end of his contract, and he lost a whole bunch of the guarantees in it when he acted a fool. And so, we'll see what happens with him.
All right, well, as I stated, we both had them at 23, so that was a nice little tie for us. The Nerd Herd had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 23. Again, so their trio was Jameis Winston, who ranked 15, Peyton Barber at 59, and then Mike Evans at 6 for a total of 80. They were tied with the Tennessee Titans. I gave them the small bump just based on I would probably take Winston and Evans over Mariota, and not even probably, I would take Winston and Evans over Mariota and Davis. Henry really being the only one who wins his battle there personally, so that's what gave them the bump over the Titans. So who do you have at 22?
At 22, I have the Bucs.
All right.
I also am not sold on Peyton Barber, but I am a Mike Evans fan. So people can complain, he doesn't get any yak. He catches the ball and just falls down. He catches the ball 25 yards down the field and falls down because he's getting tackled while he catches it. Or he catches the ball in the end zone and falls down. Mike Evans is a good wide receiver. He's up there near the elites. Winston, he has some consistency issues, but he can put up decent numbers if he plays 16 games. Peyton Barber, coming into last year, he averaged 4 yards a carry. Underwhelmed with his opportunity. We'll see if a change in offensive style helps him. But honestly, your boy Ronald Jones has looked a little more explosive in the offseason, preseason.
Let's go. That's what I like to hear.
It may end up being a 50-50 split.
And it'll soon turn into a 70-30 split for Ronald Jones as he vies for rookie. Or no, wait, he's not a rookie anymore. I can't say MVP. I can't go that high. I won't do it to myself. All right, so for me at 22, I have the New York Jets. These guys were hard for me because I like Darnold. I think he has a real shot to take a big step forward this year. He also looked very good in that game against the Giants. We did kind of forget to touch on him and Daniel Jones, though I think his 5 for 5 was being a little overblown. I do think that touchdown that Jones threw would have been intercepted had a first-string cornerback been playing and actually been paying attention to the ball and not looking the other way. But that's talk for another time. Darnold did look good. And I would not be surprised if he plays much better. I have questions about Le'Veon Bell. I know he's looked good in camp. We haven't seen him play yet, though, and he did sit out an entire year. A guy who is injury-prone. That just worries me. I cannot put that out of my mind. And then the top-ranked wide receiver they had was Robbie Anderson. I like Anderson. They had a really nice connection at the end of last year, but I need to see more of it, and I need to see what they're going to do in Adam Gase's offense, because that's another big question for me. While they did look good again in that preseason game, I just don't trust Adam Gase. I haven't seen enough out of him as a head coach to believe in the offense that he's running. A lot of people want to give him this title of an offensive guru and quarterback guru, but when you're coaching guys like Peyton Manning, it's kind of hard to give him all of the credit. So at the 22 spot, the Nerd Herd had the New York Jets as well. So they had Darnold at 21, Le'Veon Bell at 9, and Robbie Anderson at 49 with a ranking of 79. So who did you have at 21?
21, I have the Bears.
Really?
Trubisky,
okay.
Montgomery, and Robinson. You know, I want to believe they're going to take a step. Trubisky is, he's pretty mobile. He's got a decent arm. Montgomery's a rookie, and my rookie running back one. I really like Montgomery a lot. I have a whole bunch of shares. And Allen Robinson, I feel pretty strongly that he's going to bounce back. This is probably one of them I look at and I go, man, I could be way, way off on this. They could finish substantially higher. But when I try to move them up, I'm like, no, I don't want to put them over that. No, I don't think I can go there. No, I don't think I can do that either. So it ends up being a situation where they just kind of get edged out by some of these other trios.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have them much farther behind you on that. I guess, so what was that, 21? So, yeah, I'm not that far off from you. There's just a couple more that I guess less sold on than you. So for me at 21, I have the Seattle Seahawks. Obviously, Russell Wilson, a phenomenal quarterback, top 5 to 10-ish at worst. Chris Carson was the running back that was on here. Like Carson, but I do think he's going to end up being in likely a 50-50 split or close to that with Rashad Penny. I know Pete Carroll came out earlier, either today or yesterday, and was talking about how good his hands were, and they're going to try and get him the ball more in the receiving game. That would be great for him and definitely help him out, at least fantasy-wise. And then Tyler Lockett. So he's the number one there, and I do think he is a legitimate number one. I don't think DK Metcalf is going to sit there and steal catches away from him. The one thing that worries me about Lockett is he produced phenomenally, kind of in I'm not sure how to word it, but I'm not exactly sure that he can reproduce what he did last year with all the deep. The downfield targets and production with the touchdowns. I just feel like defenses are going to try and pick up on that. And it's not like he has that Tyreek Hill speed. He's fast, but he's not like game-changing fast. And so I do worry a little bit about him producing what he did last year, where really his kind of breakout year and where a lot of his points came from. So I have the Seahawks there at 21. The Nerd Herd had the Giants at 21. So Eli Manning ranked at 39, Saquon Barkley at 1, and Sterling Shepard at 31 to give you a total of 71 points. Who did you have at number 20?
Number 20, I have the Raiders.
Okay.
So this came down to I give Montgomery the edge over Jacobs. I've been Team Montgomery all offseason. Carr and Trubisky, I think, are a push. Mm-hmm. I think Carr he's a little better passer than Trubisky. Trubisky's a little more mobile. Could get some points there. But I think Antonio Brown is enough better than Robinson to offset how much better I think Montgomery is than Jacobs. And so I have the Raiders at number 20.
All right, so for me at 20, I have the Cincinnati Bengals. So the trio we had for the Bengals, Andy Dalton, Joe Mixon, and A.J. Green. Love me some Joe Mixon, and that's about it with the Bengals. Andy Dalton, I think, is going to be more than serviceable at quarterback, and then I do think A.J. Green is going to come back, likely probably 3 to 4 games in the season, and still have a decent season. So that's why I ended up ranking them in the top 20. Gave A.J. Green really more than Dalton a little bit more credit, and then obviously Joe Mixon, one of the, I think, going to be a top 5 running back in fantasy this year. I know you were also big on Mixon. That was one of the key factors in kind of bringing them all the way down to 20. But for me, all the teams I had ahead of them, there's just no way I could rank them above, or rank the Bengals above those guys, so that's why I had them there at 20. The Nerd Herd had the Chicago Bears, so not far off from where you had them. So Trubisky ranked at 18, Montgomery at 20, and Robinson at 26 for a total of 64 points. So who do you have at 19?
At 19, I have the Philadelphia Eagles.
Really? This has got to be because, well, I was going to say Sanders, but it's probably Jeffrey, isn't it?
No, I like Jeffrey. I like the Jeffrey Wentz connection a lot. Honestly, it is Sanders.
Oh, okay.
I think Sanders is going to split time a little more with Jordan Howard than many people think. I think also Sanders is going to get pressure from Darren Sproles and potentially Corey Clement in the passing game. I do think ultimately Sanders probably next year is going to be the 3-down back. But I feel like he's got to prove it. And he's got to prove it consistently. The Eagles have enough depth that if Sanders struggles, Doug Peterson doesn't have to leave him in there and let him, quote-unquote, work it out. He can take him out. He can put him on the bench. Jordan Howard is an effective runner. Yeah. And Philadelphia's got, a top 5, top 8 offensive line?
Yes, I would say probably top 5.
So, Jordan Howard running behind the top 5 line, Doug Peterson doesn't have to tell me, we think he can catch the ball. It doesn't matter. If Jordan Howard gets 200 carries behind a top 5 line, he's going to be pushing 900 yards. And he's got the power to get in the end zone. So I think that could affect Sanders. I like Wentz. Fluke or not, is Wentz going to be able to stay healthy all year?
Very true, yeah.
Jeffrey going to have a soft tissue injury? Is J.J. Arcega-Whiteside going to push Jeffrey? So there's some questions there, and that's kind of what brings him down to 29. There's obvious potential.
Yeah.
I think Wentz could end up being one of the better. I could see Wentz finishing top 10 easy. But I also could see Wentz, finishing at 18 because he misses a couple games.
I got you. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't have them off. Really, there's only one team that you have, or at least so far, that you have in your top, your bottom 32 that I don't have yet. I'm interested to see how the rest of these play out. So far, we've pretty much been naming the same teams. I don't have the Eagles much off from them. I guess I'm a little bit more believer and things around those three and making them succeed. So for me at 19, I have the Raiders, who I know you just mentioned, and pretty much the same for all of them. I'm not a believer in Jacobs, but I don't want to dismiss Carr. I know he had a bad year last year, but I think we all have seemed to have forgotten that he was a lock for the MVP a couple years ago before he broke his shoulder. And then that was the Raiders. I can't remember what they were. I believe they'd only lost 2 or 3 games at that point. Like, they were just having a phenomenal year. Granted, their offensive line, I think, was the best or second best in the league at that point, and it's dipped a little bit, but it's still probably top 10 at worst. So they still have a really good offensive line. Adding AB is a phenomenal weapon. I don't think you can take out the fact that they have Tyrell Williams there as well. A lot of people big on Foster Moreau and Hunter Renfrow. And a lot of people are very high on Josh Jacobs. I am not one of them. That was what kind of hurt them a little bit for me. I'm not exactly sure where the Nerd Herd has him ranked. I don't see him here in the top 16, so they obviously have him pretty high, and I would imagine that's because they have Jacobs ranked pretty high as well. So at 19 for the Nerd Herd, they have the Seattle Seahawks. Russell Wilson came in ranked at 7, Chris Carson at 28, and Tyler Lockett at 27 to get you a total score of 62. So just a couple teams left here in the top 16. Who do you have at 18?
At 18, I have the Jets.
Okay.
I like Darnold to take a step. Gase has been using Robbie Anderson, not just as a deep threat, but in the intermediate areas of the field, expanding his route tree. I think Le'Veon Bell is the ultimate security blanket. He's a good pass catcher. He's a good route runner. He's big enough to carry the ball on all 3 downs. He's coming off a year off, and so he's going to be fresh. And I think Bell is going to put up top 10 running back numbers potentially. It just is going to come down to, can Darnold take the step and can Robbie Anderson take the step in Adam Gase's offense?
All right, so at 18 for me, I have the Chicago Bears. You were just talking about a couple picks ago, and I agree with everything that you said there. I'm a little bit higher on Trubisky than you are. I do think another year with Matt Nagy is going to help him out a lot. I think you actually have kind of talked me into thinking that Allen Robinson is going to have a very good year this year. For me, really the only thing that held him back was David Montgomery. I think he's phenomenal. We both know, I know he's been your number 1. I flip-flopped him between 1 and 2 with him and Miles Sanders this entire time. But he's a phenomenal stud. I just wasn't sure how much he's going to lose out to Tariq Cohen because I do think at least this year they're going to figure out a way to split those two up with carries, and Tariq Cohen is going to get more of the receiving work, even though David Montgomery is a phenomenal receiver and can do it all in that backfield. At 18 for the Nerd Herd, they had the Philadelphia Eagles, so closer to your ranking than mine, it looks like. Wentz came in ranked at 8, Miles Sanders at 19, and Alshon Jeffrey at 35 for a total score of 62. Who do you have at 17?
Well, what I can say is you some bitches are drinking some Arizona Kool-Aid. That's for damn sure.
I am. So. Hey, well, and we'll get to it because, as I said, the Arizona's the one team. Again, I don't know who you have. There's only one other team you can have here, I guess, that could be different because I do have the Eagles in my 16. So Cardinals are the only team you've named that I have not had yet. And I am, man. I think they're going to be good. I don't have them much higher than or much lower than 16, but I do have them. And I'll see where the Nerd Herd has them. I don't even know. Like I did up all the numbers, but I didn't actually look at the facts. So they're not far off from where we're at right now. Just looking at the sheet that I have pulled up here. So not drinking too much into the Cardinals, but a little bit, taking a little sip. All right. So who do you have at 17?
At 17, I have the Seahawks.
Okay.
Wilson, Carson, Lockett. I think what Lockett loses in efficiency this year, he makes up for in volume. So
Fair point. I see that. I can see that.
If he ends up with the same fantasy numbers that he did last year, but he does it on more targets and more catches and fewer touchdowns, it's a win. Carson, I'm a big Rashad Penny fan. I liked Carson a lot when he came out too. And so, the two of them break my heart that they're on the same team because I think both of them could really put up big seasons. Mm-hmm. But I can see a season where, the way that they run the ball and they, them in Baltimore, the Seahawks in Baltimore, running the ball as much as they do. I could see Carson getting 270 carries and Penny getting 230 carries. So it's Carson's in line for another 1,000-yard season, and maybe getting a few more passes. Wilson, he is what he is, which is a consistent producer at the quarterback position.
All right, well, for me at 17, I have your Detroit Lions. The trio there is Matt Stafford, Kerryon Johnson, and Kenny Golladay. This one was hard for me, and I feel like I probably went a little too low on them. This would be one I guess you could probably plug the Cardinals in behind them. I just worry a little bit more about Stafford than I do the other two. I still think Kenny Golladay is going to be able to put up a good fantasy season, although Marvin Jones coming back I think is going to hurt him a little bit. The only one for me I don't have any questions on really is Kerryon Johnson. I think he's going to be an absolute stud this year. I don't buy into any of the talk about them possibly limiting his workload or splitting carries, anything like that. For me, you can book it now. I think Kerryon Johnson's going to finish as possibly 6-7 in running back in fantasy this year. I think he's going to have a huge year for the Detroit Lions this year. He was my one rock-solid stud for them. Questions about Stafford being able to really kind of bounce back after a really bad year, and then Kenny Golladay possibly losing out targets and possibly even some touchdowns with Hawkinson and Marvin Jones now being there beside him. So who do you have? Oh, I'm sorry. Before I move on, I guess I should give who the Nerd Herd had at 17. They had the Cincinnati Bengals. So Dalton with a ranking of 36, Joe Mixon with a ranking of 6, and AJ Green with a ranking of 19 to finish with a total of 61 points. Last but not least for the podcast, at least today, who do you have at 16?
At 16, I have the New England Patriots.
All right. Interesting.
So, I think Brady at this point in his career is a better NFL quarterback than he is a fantasy quarterback. Yeah, Edelman's going to get a bunch of catches, but not a ton of yards. They've added a bunch of weapons on the outside, but I don't think that necessarily means that they're going to all of a sudden turn into the Randy Moss Patriots again and start chucking it deep. I like Sony Michel the best out of all three of them. Mm-hmm. I'm looking for 1,100 yards and double-digit touchdowns, maybe 15 touchdowns from Michel. I think he's gonna, the caveat being, does his knee hold up okay? And I think he's good for this year, and I like him to put up some points. Brady and Edelman, Edelman maybe wide receiver too, especially in full PPR. I could see him catching 90 to 100 balls. But Brady's going to have a low YPA and, may throw, 30, 32 touchdowns, which is a good year. It's not a terrible year, but he's not going to throw 40 or 50 touchdowns.
For me at 16, I had the Philadelphia Eagles. We already talked about, obviously, Wentz, Sanders, and Jeffrey. Not worried about Wentz. I'm very much on the Louis Riddick train that he could be a possible MVP candidate as long as he stays healthy. And Miles Sanders, I do think, is going to be probably the lead back or the leader in the timeshare by week 5 or 6 because he is just that talented. Jeffrey is my biggest concern. While him and Wentz do have a nice connection, I just think that he's going to go to Ertz more. Whiteside, I think, is really going to push him for targets this year. So he was kind of the biggest factor in me dropping them there. However, 16, not that far off from what you had and a little bit higher than what the Nerd Herd had him ranked as. I believe they had him at 18. So just a little bit higher than what they had. And for them at 16, and the last team we will do today, the Nerd Herd had the Raiders. So not far off from either one of our rankings. Derek Carr ranked at 30. Josh Jacobs at 16, and Antonio Brown coming in at 12 for a total score of 58. So that gives us our top 16 our offensive trios is the way I wanted to word it. Quarterback, running back, wide receiver. We will do on Thursday the top 15 as well as previewing some of the games. Before we cut out of here, Dennis, let everybody know where they can find you on Twitter and about an amazing thing that you'll be doing this weekend as well.
Well, I am at Twitter on Twitter at culture_coach. That's easy for me to say. That's culture_coach. And so feel free to reach out. Love to interact, shoot the breeze, talk fantasy football, child rearing, pets, taking the boat out, any of that fun stuff, music, mostly fantasy football though. And this weekend, man, I'm pretty stoked. I'll send you the picture of the banner. By we, I mean the Fantasy Football Roundtable, and more specifically me. I'm going to be at the Midwest Fantasy Football Expo in Canton, Ohio, at the Canton Cultural Arts Center, Sunday, August 18th, from noon to 6. The expo is going to be phenomenal. There are booths all over the place in the expo. You're going to have 30 to 40 podcasts represented at 9 a.m. before the expo opens, taking part with the FF Statistics Charity League, and I am playing for the National Domestic Violence Coalition. I also play in the Giving League with it's one of the Third Mike's charity leagues. So it's an anti-domestic violence charity. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll see I tweeted out a bunch of stuff about it today, links where you can go see what it is. FF Statistics actually has set up a thing where you can place bets on which analyst you think will win. So if you go to the FF Statistics Charity League, you can go place a bet on me. All the money goes to charity if I win. So it's a fantastic idea. Really looking forward to it. Bob Harris from Football Diehards and Kyle Dvorak from Football Diehards are going to be there. Rich Dotson from the Nerd Herd, Garrett Price, Jared Wackerly, myself, the Back Row Fantasy Show guys, Bob Long, the Consistency Guide and Big Guy Sports, Full-Time Fantasy. Our network is the show sponsor. It's going to be a fantastic time. And if you go buy your tickets in advance and use code KNIGHTS, KNIGHTS, you'll get $5 off your admission.
Yeah, and it's going to be a blast. If anybody's going to be in Canton or near the Ohio area, definitely drop by and check it out. Again, $15 if you use that code and buy your ticket ahead of time, and you'll get a swag bag full of all kinds of great stuff, well worth your money as well. And Dennis is going to be getting a bunch of our swag as well sent up here to him soon as well, so you guys will possibly get a chance to win that with the Wheel of Knowledge I believe he's putting together and everything. It's going to be a fantastic time, so definitely if you guys have a chance to get up there and check it out, do that, and then tag me in any photos you guys take while you're up there, because I will be extremely jealous that I won't be able to make it up there this year. So Dennis, obviously, again, thank you so much for joining me today, and I cannot wait to talk to you on Thursday to preview some week 2 preseason games, and then talk about our top 15 offensive trios.
Man, am I the only one that wants the season to start so I can stop being in love with my teams and start realizing some of them suck?
No, I've been ready for the season to start since the Super Bowl ended. So we're getting closer and closer. It always feels like right now it just drags on. Of course, what's going to make it better for me, although I hate that it's only 1 week ahead of time, but college football is even closer. So I'm really looking forward to that starting up as well. But yeah, it's just, I can't wait. I don't think my teams are going to suck. I usually don't realize they're bad until like week 3 or 4, and at that point I'm like,
I look at them and I'm like, man, I should go make a trade, and I pull up the team and I'm like, man, but I like all those guys. I think this team's going to be good.
Yeah.
And I look at another team and I'm like, oh, I should make a trade. Oh, man, I think this team's really good too. So, man, It sucks. I'm terrible. I have rose-colored glasses on when I look at my team.
Oh, I hear you. It's a lot harder when like I said, I'm looking at like 32 different teams and trying to figure out which one I need to make moves on. I'm like, no, the other problem is I own a lot of the same players on all those teams too, so it just makes it even more difficult.
Right.
But all right, Dennis, have yourself a great day, and I will talk to you again on Thursday.
All right on.
Prepare for glory! I want to know if you got your popcorn ready. Do you got your popcorn ready? I came out the womb, I was ready.
And he's hit the end zone for an unbelievable touchdown.
I would be honored if you played football for this team.
Throw it up above his head. They can't jump with me. Golly.
Oh, they tackle him at the 40-yard line.
Who can make a play? I can. Who can make a play? I can.
Hot out there. Cool in here. Now with Con Edison, you can make your AC smart and control it from anywhere for free. Enroll and receive $25 or more. Just plug our Smart AC kit into your window AC, connect to Wi-Fi, and control your AC from your phone. Already have a smart AC? Enroll and receive up to $95. Enroll now and start saving at connet.com/smartac. Con Edison. Everything matters.
Hi, I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans. 30% of Americans who are planning home improvements of $5,000 or more will pay for those renovations with a high-interest credit card. That may not be a great idea. A better idea may be to take cash out of your home with a Quicken Loans 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. The rate today on our 30-year fixed-rate mortgage is 4.125%. APR 4.22%. Call us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com.
Rate subject to change. Pay 0.88% fee to receive this discounted rate. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. License in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.